Chapter 14. When the Seraphim's forces revealed themselves next, it was not in any great coordinated attack as they'd attempted on the Penguin, Zeus, or Zatanna. In fact, encountering them was entirely unintentional. "They just caught me as I was walking out!" Dick had to shout over gunfire, but he sounded too calm for all the rounds that could be heard being fired nearby. "Don't even know what I did to piss 'em off! I could handle it," and then he grew quieter, "but it's supposed to be my night off. I don't have any of my suits with me." "Are you carrying anything to keep yourself protected?" Batman asked over the team radio. "A couple of darts, a smoke pellet. But if they aren't able to fire at me, they may well start firing on someone else. For whatever reason, I've got their attention." "Should have never come back to Gotham, rich boy!" A thug could be heard yelling over his fire. "Bastard son of a bastard billionaire!" "At least they don't know who your actual bastard son is," Dick said. "I'm at the corner of 8th and Grand. Who's close enough to give me a hand?" "Can hear the shots from here," Batgirl said. "On my way." "Thanks," Dick said. There was a brief ceasefire before another barrage of bullets, yells, and grunts, followed by the sound of something smashing against the concrete and Dick yelling, "Any of the rest of you want to try that?" Batgirl bounded across rooftops toward the sound of gunfire and flashes in the darkness. Dick would be fine, she was already sure of it. It was more a matter of not permitting the gunmen to escape before they could learn something more of their machinations. "Just checked," Dick said. "He's got one of those tattoos. Definitely one of them." With that, Batgirl leapt between roofs, even faster, until she could easily look down on 6 armed men shouting at one another. Dick leaned against the backside of a building, with an unconscious body at his side. "Get on the roof," one of the gunmen said. "Should be a clear shot." Batgirl smirked to herself as one of his lackeys made his way to a construction ladder on the building's side. She dodged behind a large vent, out of the direct view of the man as he made a run for a clear shot at her ally. "You might want to hurry," Dick said. "Looks like they're spreading out." "On it." Batgirl stepped out from her hiding place. The gunman heard her say it, but by then it was too late. Batgirl closed the distance in a single bound, grabbed both of his arms, pulled backwards, and crashed a foot into his back. He screamed in pain and attracted the attention of his companions. Some of them opened fire, others shouted, "No way! Wayne's kid is the priority!" An explosion of smoke erupted in the middle of the alleyway, followed by several fits of coughing and demands to know where Grayson had gotten off to. Some argued whether it was Batgirl who threw the smoke pellet as their companions ran to make their retreat. Batgirl grabbed the gun from the man she'd wounded to keep it out of his hands and searched his person for any more ammunition. She found a whole belt of it wrapped around his waist. When he groaned, she swiftly punched him in the face, knocked him unconscious, and rushed to descend to Dick's side. He was tending to the one who he'd knocked down, propped him against the dirty brick wall of the adjacent building, and shook him in an attempt to wake him up. Batgirl brought a hand to the communicator in her ear and said, "Got 2. Others are running down Grand." "On it." To judge Batman's tone, it sounded as though the two were being left alone as Dick slowly awakened his opponent. "Glad you decided to join us again," Dick said. "My friend and I have a few questions for you." "Screw you!" The gunman spat a loogie at Dick's face. Unamused, Dick pulled him back from the building and smashed him into it again. "I'm the good cop, buddy," Dick said. "You ever seen what this particular Batgirl can do? I can assure you she knows every pressure point in your body." He leaned close, channeled his mentor as best he could, and said, "She could break you." Again, the captured gunman spat toward Dick as several rounds of gunfire took over the air a few blocks away, likely Batman descending on his cohorts. "Let me ask you something," Dick began again. "What'd your boss ever teach you about Romani?" Dick's victim gave him a confused look for a moment before he began to pound his arms and struggled to get free. "Devil worker! Curse weaver! Gypsy son of a bitch!" Dick made some room between the two of them before punching him directly in the eyes. The man let out a cry of pain. "Don't talk about my mother that way." He paused, allowed the man to take in the statement before he followed with, "I think a curse on her earns you a curse on yourself." He slipped into a bit of an unidentifiable accent Batgirl had never heard before. A small smile crossed his face as he sounded almost as if he was snickering. He thrust the criminal toward Batgirl and yelled, "Catch!" She got a hold of him and clasped both of his hands behind his back. A wily smile still on his face, Dick reached into his pocket and pulled out what appeared to be a circular bit of metal, almost like a coin, with a square hole through the middle. And speaking of my mom, you might be interested to know this was hers too. He brought the coin closer to the criminal. Know what this is, smart guy? It wards off evil spirits. At least when I'm holding it. Fat lot of good it's doing you, the man sneered. Well, see, that's the thing, Dick continued. It'll protect any good aroma. But someone like you? He took a step closer. It has just the opposite effect. I don't believe in your garbage! Well, that's the great thing, isn't it? Dick said. God, demons, magic, they're real whether you believe in them or not, aren't they? Mine is real! He tried shouting and struggled hard to break free from Batgirl's grip. That crap your thieving ancestors made up is just that! Crap! Well then, Dick's smile was almost malicious. Let's give it a try, shall we? If you're right, you've got nothing to lose. He pressed the coin against the man's chest and looked him in the eyes. If I'm right, they're about to flock into you like moths to an open flame. Batgirl was still unsure just what Dick was trying to accomplish, but it seemed effective. The man was now shuddering in horror and began to scream that he pull it off. Well, would you look at that, Dick said. Are they crowding around you? Can you feel them? No, he insisted, terrified. Take your cursed relic away! Hey, Batgirl, anything you want to know from this guy? She tightened her grip. Next attack. When? Where? As Batgirl kept him locked firmly in place, the man's eyes darted to and fro. His body started shaking. Sweat dripped from his brow and his mouth fell agape. He and Dick held their positions for nearly a minute before he finally looked upward and screamed, We only act as you taught him, my lord! Your worthy judge! The first king's father! Please protect me! Don't let this heathen steal my spirit! Both of them went silent for a moment before Dick turned the coin in his hand and said, I grabbed this out of a take-a-penny cup at a convenience store so I could switch it with an actual coin. And with that, he again delivered a punch to the man's face. Batgirl set him down after he seemed to have again fallen into unconsciousness. And they call my people superstitious. What was all that? What was all that? Batgirl asked as the alley was finally peaceful again. Before Dick could respond, there came a whoosh of black, and Batman now stood between the two. Quite an impressive trick you pulled, he said. I learned from the best, my father's, Dick said. The one who taught me how to use superstition and fear of the unknown to get what I want. And the one who dresses up like a bat at night. You better actually be unconscious. Batman turned toward the man they'd just knocked out. Oh, come on, crack a smile, Dick said. It was a great bait and switch. I'm impressed you managed to get him to crack. Gotham's police have been working on these men for weeks and couldn't get anything out of them. Your tactic must have really gotten under his skin. Superstitious and cowardly lot. That's what you always said, right? Dick asked. Usually not like this, though, Batman said. But it might be worth looking into. You made up every word about that coin. Of course I did, but I got some good karma by switching this thing out for an actual penny. Batman glared at him, unamused. It's good stuff. Probably saved me from some bullet wounds, too. Just don't rely on protection you don't know is going to be there. Batman pressed a hand to his cowl. Oracle, did you record what he said before he was knocked unconscious? Worthy judge, first king's father, that stuff. She recited through the connection to both Batgirl and Batman's ears. What was that supposed to mean? A reference to David? Saul was a king before David was, Batman said. We'll talk about it later. Hopefully we'll finally have a chance to get ahead of them. He turned toward Batgirl. Good work there. And then turned toward Dick. If you're staying out, you should probably change. I've had enough excitement for one night, Dick said. I'll see you both back at home. I just wish we knew more about them. Bitterness tinged Batman's words. His most loyal, seemingly unbreakable servants are clearly the bottom of the food chain, while his closest allies don't even seem to serve him willingly. It's a pretty brilliant advantage if you think about it, Dick said. When your worst security can't be broken and your higher-ups don't even have memories of what you did to them, sounds like something Jason once mentioned. Hopefully it won't be that bad, Batman interrupted. I dealt with Blackfire once. Unlike nearly every other lowlife in the city, once seems to have been enough. With that, he drew his grapple and took again to the rooftops, leaving Batgirl and Dick alone in the alleyway. She turned toward him. Wanted to ask something. I've been talking to Tim. I know you've been studying a lot about belief and faith. Said he didn't know how to describe you. Just wondered. I'm a lot of things, Dick said. All Roma are a lot of things. Honestly, everyone's a lot of things, except maybe guys like this. He used his foot to point at the unconscious gunman. He could stand to be a few more things. Ask me another time, BG. It's my night off and my ears are ringing. Batgirl nodded and granted Dick permission to return to the streets. She looked down at the man they'd knocked out. One of the strange Enochian symbols was tattooed on his right hand. The way he reacted when Dick simply held a trinket and the things he shouted. Just how far gone were men like this? What did it take to bring them down there? And if this was how his servants behaved, how far into the abyss must their master have sunk them?